Okay, let's talk about our coding style. This is contained in Appendix A of the book, but it's really important to work on writing our code in a standard, pretty sort of way so that it always looks good and we can always read it easily and other people can understand it more easily. It's also important to emphasize that we want to do this as we're writing the code. So you want to keep it looking good as we go rather than try to pretty it up at the very end. Alright, so going through the appendix here. First of all, we're going to start out every one of our files with a comment block up at the top talking about what the file does, who wrote it, and when it was done. When we create classes, which is something that we talk about in Chapter 8 of the book, we're going to make sure that our class names start with an uppercase letter, and then if there's more than one word in the class, like this one, then each successive word starts with a capital letter as well. Okay? In terms of further style points, we'll go ahead and list all of our fields in a class starting at the top. If we happen to have any constants that we're creating, those will be all uppercase and separate words separated by underscore characters. Variables, on the other hand, are mixed case, start with a lowercase letter rather than an uppercase, and subsequent words are capitalized as well. Okay, again, talking about things regarding classes. Constructors always match the name of the class. We want to put a comment header at the top of every method so that it describes what the method does. And then when we're writing our methods, we'll go ahead and we name our methods the same way that we name variables, mixed case, but starting with a lowercase letter. Again, we have comment blocks in front of all of our methods inside the class. In terms of control structures, things like ifs and for loops and whiles, even though they're not always strictly required, we're going to use blocks for our control structures. So we begin and end with curly brackets. We'll do sane indentation in front of everything when we're putting things inside blocks so that the indentation mirrors the block structure and illustrates what belongs to the block. As I'll show you in a little bit, it's a good idea to comment the ending brackets of blocks so that you don't become confused as to which piece the bracket corresponds to. Let's see, one more thing here in terms of a for loop. Obviously we're using the block again, like we just talked about. It's sort of a tradition to use I, J, and K as loop counter variables. There's nothing saying that that has to happen, but that is the style. Okay? So Appendix A, this code is there. This shows you some of our coding style pieces. And this is mostly related to classes, but the things like method names, variable names, blocks, indentation, all those apply even when you're not using classes. Okay, now let's take a look at a really bad example. So here is a piece of code that's supposed to just sort of show a static field when you run it, show a bunch of random number or circles appearing on the screen, flashing on and off in different locations with different colors. If I run that, you can see what I get. So it's actually a running program. But obviously, it is not very well indented. It's obviously not commented, and you wouldn't want to try to read this or maintain it because it's not very well done in terms of its prettiness. Okay, it doesn't follow a coding style. So we can fix it. If we go to a let's see, where did it move to? There we go. Edit menu, auto format, or Command T on Apple, Control T on Windows or Linux, and choose that option. it will reformat things, and for the most part it puts in a pretty good indentation scheme. I confused it a little bit here with the for loop, so if I put some spaces in and reformat now, it works a little bit better. Okay, and there's a more reasonable version of that code. Still works the same, but now it's a lot easier to read. Okay? Alright, as I was saying, it's really important that you do your indentation and your prettiness as you go, rather than trying to do it at the very end. So for example, let's add a mouse click to this. And what we're going to do is make a mouse click method that when we click the screen, the application will stop. Okay? Alright, a couple things. Programming style wise, it's always a good idea to every time that I start a block, I end it before I even type in the body. And that way I know that I've got my ending bracket in there and I won't have to worry about mismatched brackets at the end. That's something that beginning students a lot of times have a problem with. Secondly, notice how processing, the PDE here, is suggesting where my indentation should be. So don't fight it. A lot of times students will end up typing their code over here or something like that, but we want to go ahead and use the indentation suggestion that the IDE or the PDE gives me. Okay? And again, before you finish things off, you use your Control T or Command T, depending on your platform, to format. Obviously, if I was running or going to turn in this code or keeping it for later use, I would definitely want to document it, write in my comments at the top telling what it does, a comment for each method, and so on. Okay? So our coding style is very important, not only just in terms of what your professor will grade you on, but also in terms of people understanding your code, which is the real benefit. Later on, people will actually be able to understand what you've written and maintain it.